Hello and welcome to this very different 2020 Remembrance virtual service. We're pleased to say we have people joining us today from right the way across the country. My name is James and I'm the Scout County Commissioner for Buckinghamshire, and I'm delighted that on behalf of our friends just across the border, my fellow County Commissioner from Oxfordshire, Wendy, has also joined me to welcome you today.
Hello James, and thank you for inviting us today.
You're welcome.
As Britain entered the First World War on the 4th of August 1914, Robert Baden-Powell, founder of the Scout movement, volunteered Scouts to support the war effort. They weren't to have a military role, but could undertake work which released men for service in the armed forces. The skills the Scouts learned through their scouting proved very useful in carrying out a range of jobs, from working on farms to keeping watch on the coast to guarding railway lines. The first ever Poppy Appeal was held in 1921, the founding year of the Royal British Legion, and this is the third year that the Scouts have partnered with the Royal British Legion to commemorate Remembrance Day. Back in 1921, red silk poppies, inspired by the famous First World War poem In Flanders Fields, were sold to raise vital funds, helping First World War veterans find employment and housing after the war.
The following year, the poppy factory was set up, employing disabled ex-servicemen to create poppies to sell during the appeal. And today, the factory still produces millions of poppies every year.
By wearing a poppy, you aren't just remembering servicemen and women, you're supporting a new generation of veterans and service personnel.
Today, we're going to be listening to a number of readings, interviews with people from across the country, talking to war veterans about their experiences, raising money for the Poppy Fund, and of course, all joining together to stand in silence for 2 minutes to remember those who sadly died for us fighting during the Great Wars. So please join with us in thoughtful reflection as we start the Remembrance commemoration.
It makes me feel immensely proud of our collective national effort in pulling together behind those on the front line to combat
this year, as they have for generations, the armed forces community has stepped up to support the nation through challenges no one expected.
23,000 service personnel are earmarked for the COVID support
force. There's been an incredible relationship between the military, the NHS and communities up and down the country.
Right now, the Royal British Legion is helping those members of the armed forces community who are isolated from family, feeling lonely, facing homelessness and in financial crisis. So we need you. By supporting the Poppy Appeal, you will help the Royal British Legion support our armed forces community when they need it most. So please, show our armed forces community that we have their back, just as they've always had ours.
I'm Eva from the Loughton Scout Group, and I'm going to tell you about a Remembrance Day. In Remembrance Day, we remember the people who have died in the World War I. And it is important because the soldiers had died, so we have to remember them. It's really important to remember them because they were trying to help a country. How kind is that? And so we celebrate it by putting poppies on our t-shirts. So this is a picture of a poppy. It looks like a poppy. And we put poppies on our t-shirts so that will remember us. I'm Amira Dotley from Loughton Scout Group. I'm going to be talking about Remembrance Day on 11th of November. Remembrance Day to me is when soldiers died in wars across the world. It's important because I'm sad and proud of what they've done, of the families and soldiers that have come and helped our country for freedom. We celebrate it using poppies that come from services in Scotland. Scotland is a good country that has this type of poppy. There's a poem of Fernandez Field and this man, type of doctor comedian, he has once went to Flanders Field a few months after the World War I, and he found poppies and wrote a poem about it called The Flanders Field.
We meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do, till the blue skies drive the dark clouds far away. So will you please say hello to the folks that I know? Tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy to know that as you saw me go, I was singing this song. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Now come on everyone, let's hear it. We'll meet again, that's it. Don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day.
My name is James Robertson. I am a former Cub Scout, Scout, Venture Scout and leader. I left the Scout Association in May 2000 at 18 years of age when I joined the British Army and subsequently commissioned as an officer into the Army Air Corps. I served on multiple tours of Afghanistan, primarily flying the Lynx Mark 7 utility helicopter and later the Apache attack helicopter, and was an air mission commander and second in command of an Apache squadron. Our time in Afghanistan was very varied. We had all sorts of different tasks, but I think the one that most sticks in my mind is holding what we call VHR, or Very High Readiness. This meant that as a crew, we needed to make sure that our Apache was ready to fly, fueled, armed, ready to go anywhere that we were called, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. This meant that we slept within a few hundred meters of the aircraft. This meant that we were on duty at all sorts of hours of the day and night, and that we were always ready to go out to respond when the phone rang. Now, some days that phone didn't ring, and they were the good days because we knew that everything was quiet and peaceful in the area that we were working. But on other days it was so busy that we would barely stop for food, and any food that we had would be passed through the window when we stopped for fuel and rearming when we came back to base. Those days we didn't really know what we were going to be facing, and we made sure that everything that we could possibly have to deal with we were ready for. We needed to carry maps for the whole area. We needed to make sure that we understood who was working where, how we'd be able to speak to them on the radio, who was trying to do what, and where our partnered troops from the coalition, so the other forces other than the British Army, and also our Afghan counterparts, where they were working both with their army, their police and civilians. If we understood all of these things, if we understood what we needed to do and we understood who we were flying out there to help, that meant that we were able to do our job. Now, some days it was very easy and some days it was very, very challenging. And we knew that everything that we did, everything that we prepared for, if we were flying in an area, somebody's life potentially was depending on us. And if we made a mistake, that could be the difference between somebody living or dying. And that's a very, very difficult job to have to do. And this is where I think it's most relevant to you in the Scout Association now. The Scout motto, be prepared, has never been more relevant than it is today. If you can make sure that you are prepared, if you can make sure that your head and your mindset is ready for what comes against you, you make sure you've learned the things that you need to learn, and you make sure that you are prepared for all the eventualities that come up against you, then you will be able to be a very valuable and very useful member to the community around you.
Hi, I've been asked to provide you with a short video clip to give you a bit of background into my experiences while serving in the British Army. I served with the Parachute Regiment for quite a few years, and the conflict which I took part in was in Northern Ireland, South Belfast, and taking part in Operation Banner from February 1992. This was mainly a supporting role. We supported the local constabulary, the police force, the local regiments and security forces whilst being there. While it was at the end of the main troubles in Northern Ireland, the atmosphere was still quite tense, and that led to a great brotherhood experience, I guess, whilst it wasn't quite as bad as what it was in the mid to late 70s. There was still some conflict that was happening, which meant you had to keep your wits about you. It's difficult to really sort of describe on a day-to-day basis, other than it was all about keeping your wits about you, making sure that your unit members were all well looked after and they were looking after you. It was about making sure that any activities were reported and you were there effectively to keep the peace, which is actually the main role for any serving soldier in any conflict, as best as possible. My experiences really of the armed forces were that of a complete brotherhood. The friends that I made there and then I still keep in touch with, and you take each other through every part and parcel of military life. It's something which stays with you forever. It's something which you will always appreciate, and I think in some respects stands you in good stead for any walk of life when you leave the military or any of the armed forces. It gives you a background in being able to cope with a lot of situations. Remembrance Sunday to me is something quite hard sometimes. It's a time of reflection, it's a time of remembering, it's a time of giving thanks for those who unfortunately have not managed to come back from the conflicts which they've taken part in. Not only to those serving, but their families, their friends and their units around them. And that's why November the 11th is such a very special day. It is a sombre moment, but it's also one to acknowledge and celebrate the lives of those who gave everything. I hope that this little chat gives you a little bit of insight into something which I took part in. I wish you all the best in your futures, and if any of you do go on to serve in the British Army or any of the British forces, I wish you all the best. It's certainly something that you will cherish, and you will be a part and parcel of a machine that is the best in the world. Good luck, and we will remember them.
Well, my full name is Peter Raymond Bettleshill. I was born at Ashford in Middlesex.
What year?
1930. So, as you gather, that makes me in my 90s.
What role did you do in the army?
Well, the point is, they, as I say, I started this job there, and I was dead keen I was going to be a motor engineer. So, when I found there were, you could do a night class, but you also had to do one day a week at school, shall we say. And that's how come I got in the, serving petrol and getting out to change wheels, take a wheel off, and then of course you went from then and then onto the brakes, and then suspension and steering, and you worked your way on then, and say to the gearbox, that might not make a lot to you, and then on to the rear axles, and then onto the engine, and also in our day you learn everything. What was on your time sheet, you done, even when although there was an electrician on the course or something, and you were on, and you had to know so much about the electrical fault that you don't just call a bloke in just for one, but
What vehicles were you repairing in the army?
We had they were Hillman, like what we called Hillman Mings, and 3-ton trucks on there, and then you worked a bit on a tank on the engine side of it, or whatever had to be changed, engine, a Brent carrier, and
was this in the UK, or did you go abroad as well?
Yeah, I started off at Aldershot. Then you had to do 6 weeks training, and first of all, and also military training in the same as
your basic training.
Basic training, yeah, and then you got as I say, I went in for the whole lot, so I had to go on a driving course.
So you learned to drive in the army?
Oh yeah, I drove all around Aylesbury and Buckingham and all that.
Did you learn to drive the tanks as well?
Yeah.
We What type of tanks were they? Were they the big tanks?
Yeah, we started off on the small ones, then built up.
So you said you went to France as well, yes?
Oh yeah, I done I don't know how many places in England, Wales and Scotland at all. And they said, because the bloke says, "Are you on it again?" He said, I said, "Yeah, they're fed up with us here, so they want to get rid of us." So I said, "They put us over the other side now."
Yeah. So you went to France then?
Yeah, I went to France.
Yeah.
If there was a ATS regiment on the same camp as you were called on to drive the lady officers, shall I say, for any function due, And of course, if they, like women, they thought you were smart enough, they asked for you to be their driver and so forth.
So you drove a lot of important people?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So how many years were you in the army?
I stayed in then till I was 38, then come out and spelling Civvy Street and done a lot of the garages then, and then finished up. That's how I finished up. Didn't really finish up in Scotland, and that was where I met my wife in Scotland. And well, as a girl, she, like they all were, you know. There's some photos there of us. Well, we went on different dinners and dude, you know.
Was your wife in the army?
No.
No. So you met her in Scotland.
Yeah, she come on one or two dudes that we were able to take them on, but no, she wasn't, you know, on there.
What about memories of when you were in the army? What can you remember? What's the
one or two of them there, and also when blokes parachuted in and one got hooked up on the church spire, you know, had to get him down off of there. And
did you see any of the other side? Did you see any of the Germans and then the others?
Yeah, you see
Americans and things.
Yeah. There's some photos in there of me with the American, because some of them wanted to stay on over there. So after the war, they've stayed on in France and Germany and brought their families over.
You were in the Scouts as well before you went into the army?
Yeah. I was in the Cubs to start with. Then I was in the, as they say, Boy Scouts, and we were 135 Uxbridge Road in Middlesex at Feltham. That was. And I also took a cub group on to learn, teach them. They had tie knots and do things like that. Same as with the what's name on there. I used to do some night classes. I don't know how long you've been. Remember the pub called the Green Man? You know? I had a room upstairs there that I used once a week to teach mechanics and the basic. And if you've got a car, says you could change your wheel, and used to teach them all that.
So obviously with Remembrance Day not happening because of the COVID, what will you be doing? What will you be doing on Remembrance Day? Do you usually go to your local parade?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been in all the parades there. Yeah, there's a paragraph there. Yeah.
I think I remember seeing you last year.
Yeah.
I've been
in there all there. Yeah.
So what would you say to a younger person, a cub or a scout now, thinking of maybe going to the army or something like that? What would you say? Anything to them?
I do. I reckon it's a good. I can't fault it, although saying that sound good. Do it. I've got two sons. Now, it wouldn't have suited the oldest one. He wouldn't have took to it at all on there. But when I say to him about different things at work, he said, Dad, if we'd done that, he said, they'd just get up and walk out of us. We'd lose all that, he says, on there. And he reckons I had a hard life. Mainly, I said, there were times when you were out in the fields and you're doing a job and you didn't finish it that night or to get the vehicle back. So you slept underneath the vehicle and you got up in the morning, washed in the bucket of water, and then got the job finished to get it back. But no, he said, I think the younger one would have took to, but as I said, I didn't say being everywhere near. I mean, I'd say I can't complain.
thank you ever so much for sharing your memories with us.
Yeah.
And we hope you will spend your hour or a few hours on Remembrance Day remembering all your.
Well, we
your
shall
friends.
do, yeah, because we should do something. Go to dinners or something, you know, on there.
You might obviously to remember your friends that you made in the war.
Yeah. Well, like the one of the solicitors and my sons, and we were talking about leaving things and that. So she said, "Is there any more names you want to put on here?" I said, "Well, to tell you the truth, there's not any of them left now." I said, "I've lost friends, relations, cousins." And I said, "There's not many. They all seem to have gone."
Few and far between now, isn't it?
So,
well, we wish you well, and obviously stay safe during these times.
Yeah.
And thank you for your time and your stories.
Yeah.
And thank you ever so much. Thank you.
Grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we shall remember them.
In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row and row, that mark our place, and in the sky the lark still bravely sing and fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead, short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from flailing hands we throw the torch, be yours, hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. Sergeant Martin Kroger, 9th Battalion of the Loyal North Lancashire Regiment.
In the spring of 1915, shortly after losing a friend in Ypres, a Canadian doctor, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, was moved by the sight of the poppies growing in the battlefields, and that inspiration led him to write the now famous poem In Flanders Fields, which begins, "In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row." The poem then inspired an American academic named Moyna Michael to adopt the poppy in memory of those who had fallen in the war. She campaigned to get it signed as an official symbol of remembrance across the United States and worked with others who were trying to do the same in Canada, Australia and the UK. Also involved with those efforts was a French woman, Anna Goura, who was in the UK in 1921, where she planned to sell the poppies in London. There she met Earl Haig, founder of the Royal British Legion, who was persuaded to adopt the poppy as an emblem for the Legion in the UK. The Legion, which had been formed in 1921, ordered 9 million poppies and sold them on 11th of November that year, the same date that the original armistice or peace agreement was signed, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. That is why we hold our minute silence on 11 a.m. on Remembrance Day. Over time, other poppy colours have been made for different reasons. Purple poppies are in memory of all the animals that have died in conflict. These include dogs, horses and pigeons, which were used to get messages back from behind enemy lines. Black poppies are in memory of black and minority ethnic people that have died in conflict. Many forget the sacrifices made by our brothers and sisters from Africa and Asia, and are surprised about the number of black and minority ethnic people who served not just during the Second World War, but the World War I. White poppies can be seen as controversial, as they stand a symbol to strive for peace and to remember everyone, including civilians and animals, that have died. They are an important reminder that victory in a war is not an end in itself, but should be the beginning of peace. When you wear a poppy, remember those who gave their lives so that you have the freedom to wear a poppy.
I am reading Who Are These Men by Judy Johnson, age 11. Who are these men? Who are these men who march so proud, who quietly weep, eyes closed, head bowed? These are the men who once were boys, who missed out on youth and all its joys. Who are these men with aged faces, who silently count the empty spaces? These are the men who gave their all, who fought for country, for freedom for all. Who are all these men with a sorrowful look, who can still remember the lives that were took? These are the men who saw young men die, the price of peace is always high. Who are these men who, in the midst of pain, whispered comfort to those who they would not see again? These are the men whose hands held tomorrow, who brought back our future with tears, blood and sorrow. Who are these men who promised to keep alive in their hearts the God holds the steep? These are the men who I promised again. Veterans, my friends, I will remember them.
Hello, my name is John Dalton and I'm an Assistant Scout Leader at 1st Woburn in Marlow District. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how Woburn commemorate Remembrance Sunday and the things we do in the lead up to Remembrance Sunday. We have a war memorial at Woburn Green and it has about 146 names on, very sadly, from both the First World War and the Second World War. On Remembrance Sunday, normally we have a parade and a service at the War Memorial. All the young people are there, all the beavers, cubs, scouts, explorers, scouts sometimes, and their parents. And there's usually over 1,000 people there and surrounding the War Memorial. It gets very busy and not everybody can see the War Memorial all the time through the service. The shorter people get behind the taller people. And some years ago, we had an idea that we would make some white wooden crosses and put them in a big square in the middle of the green next to the War Memorial. We're very fortunate at Woburn that we've got a book called The Men of Woburn War Memorial. And there are quite a lot of details in there, names, ages, regiments, where they lived, lots of really interesting information. And we use that information to make up some identity plaques for each of the 146 lost soldiers and sailors and airmen. And they look roughly like this. So there's an example from the First World War. And you can see that unfortunately this chap was only 18 years old. How young is that? Okay, and we use a slightly different poppy for the Second World War. And so we end up with 146 of these on the wooden crosses. And they're placed there by all the young people, beavers, cubs and scouts, before the parade sets off, have their chance to place one of the identity plaques on a cross. Quite often, they are living in the same road that that casualty lived in before he left to go off to war. In fact, we had one explorer move house earlier this year who, when they came to sell the house, discovered or remembered the name that one of these soldiers had actually lived in his house. So after the identity details have been placed on the wooden crosses, normally we parade along the roads are closed, and we gather for a service at the War Memorial with all the colours, the Union flag and all the troop colours and packs and beaver colonies colours. And this year, unfortunately, because of COVID, we haven't been able to do any of that. So the next best thing that we've been able to do is to pre-record and pre-photograph the service from remotely, involving Scouts along the way as far as we can, the internet and Facebook on Sunday, so that everybody can view it from their own home and stop for the 2-minute silence, stand on their front doorstep to observe the 2-minute silence, and then rejoin it and watch it online. And that is how this year we are going to commemorate our Remembrance Sunday from First Woburn and First Bourne End Scouts here.
Oh, hello. My name is Mike Senior, and for 20 years I lived in a small village called The Lee, which is about 10 miles south of Aylesbury in the Chilterns. And for the next few minutes, I would like to tell you a First World War story of a group of 10 young men from The Lee who in 1914 volunteered together and joined the County Territorial Regiment called the Bucks Battalion. These 10 young men trained together in England for about 18 months, and then in May 1916 they were sent to the Western Front, to French Flanders, and they were positioned opposite the German trenches near a village called Fromelles, which is about 10 miles south of Lille. Now, before I say what happened to these 10 young men from the Lee, I would like to tell you about an event which is not normally associated with war, a cricket match which took place in the Lee the day before war was declared in 1914. So just let me read a brief extract from a book that I wrote about the men from the Lee, which is called No Find the Courage, though it's been now reprinted with the title Fromelles 1916. The summer of 1914 was dry with plenty of sun. The weather was ideal for cricket, and the Lee was having an exceptional season. The villagers were eager to record yet another victory when on the 3rd of August, the bank holiday Monday, they played a team representing the Lee Manor House. But there was talk of war. Germany had declared war on Russia 2 days earlier, and the minds of the cricketers were preoccupied with thoughts of mobilization and enlistment. The match was at an interesting stage, with the Manor House 11 just holding its own, when suddenly the weather deteriorated. Play was interrupted several times by heavy showers, and at 5 p.m. the game had to be abandoned. During one of these rain stoppages, 3 of the players sheltered under a large tree on the edge of the ground, and they resolved to meet to finish the match when hostilities had ended. The 3 men were Ivor Stewart Liberty, who captained the Manor House team, Albert Phillips, the local fast bowler, and G.D. Khaki Roberts, an all-rounder playing for the Manor House. The following day, the 4th of August, Britain declared war on Germany. The match was never completed. All 3 volunteered for the army and saw active service. Khaki Roberts survived the war unscathed. Ivor Stewart Liberty was severely disabled, and Bert Phillips was killed. Two other members of the Lee team lost their lives in the war. They were Arthur and Ralph Brown, brothers from Lee Common. In total, 30 young men from the Lee were killed in the First World War. 9 of the 10 men who went to Fromelles, of the 9 of the 10, 9 were killed and 1 was severely disabled within seconds of one another when they took part in an attack on the 19th of July 1916 against the German lines. The attack, typical of many such attacks on the Western Front, was a disaster. And in total, in the attack, there were 9,000 casualties within a 12-hour period. The German trenches were not taken. The Bucks Battalion lost half of their men, including the 9 Lee men, about 400 people in total. Today, the dead are recorded on the War Memorial in the Lee, on the village green. And the names of 9 young men who died at Fromelles and others were read out every Remembrance Sunday. Recently, the Lee and Fromelles have made a pact of friendship, and there are regular exchanges of visits between the two places. And at least these young men who lost their lives at Fromelles will not be forgotten. Thank you.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
When you go home, tell them of us and say, for the or tomorrow we gave our today.
Thank you so much for joining us today for our virtual Remembrance commemoration. We'd like to thank all the people who undertook the readings and those who were kind enough to give their time to be interviewed.
We realise that things are very different at the moment, but we're pleased that the scouting spirit continues on, even though we cannot physically be together. On behalf of everyone in Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire Scouts, we wish you a peaceful rest of the day. Do keep safe and well.